Welcome to Second Half Conversations. I'm your host, Sondra Ziegler. This is a space to discuss all kinds of topics about the second half of life, from complicated legal topics like wealth protection and business succession planning that we break down in a practical way, to long-term care planning and care navigation when you have a loved one on a care journey, to leaning into fully experiencing new seasons of life, of work, and relationships. Our team and guests are here to equip you to take full advantage of where you're at. Because if done right, the second half is the better half. Let's get to it. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Second Half Conversations, where we talk honestly and thoughtfully about the family, legal, emotional, and practical issues that come up in the second half of life. I'm your host, Sondra Ziegler with Ziegler Estate Law Group. At our firm, we spend a lot of time helping families create a roadmap for the complicated journey that's ahead, protecting loved ones, preserving legacies, and giving families peace of mind as life changes. So I'm particularly glad to be having this conversation today. I think it fits beautifully within that mission, but from a slightly different angle. We're not only talking about caring for aging parents or getting documents in order, we're also talking about the season when our children become adults, when our role as parents changes, when our identity shifts, and when we start asking, what does it mean to finish well? My guest today, and I'm so thrilled to finally have her on, is Kate Hamilton, author of The Imperfect Parent. Kate is married to Charlie and is the mother of two young men who are independent, confident, and productive adults. And that's the goal, right?
That's the goal.
She describes herself as perhaps an unlikely writer because of her dyslexia, which I found very interesting. But her life experience has compelled her to become an author. She earned an MBA in international business and is a former corporate executive turned mother and entrepreneur. When Kate is not writing, mentoring young adults, or working with Charlie, you might find her volunteering with Lemonade Day, a youth entrepreneurship program, or planning the next family adventure. Kate, welcome to Second Half Conversations.
Hi, Sondra. It's so great to be here, and I look so much forward to this. And I'm really appreciative of what you and your husband and your whole law firm does, because I've gotten to see firsthand how it's helped my family. And so I just wanted to add a little plug of how great you guys are.
Well, thank you. But we are, first of all, glad and thrilled to have you as clients, but also as friends. And I really am thankful that you've made time for this conversation today. One of the things I love about your story is that The Imperfect Parent is not just a parenting book.
Exactly.
It really is a book about intentionality and legacy, adult children, family patterns, and boy, don't we all have those, marriage, grandparents, aging parents, what we pass on both intentionally and unintentionally. And I just really think our listeners are going to find a lot of wisdom in what you've written. And I just loved how intentional you are about putting this down on a page that we can benefit from your experience. So, first question, which I think is one of the favorites that an author could possibly get, is what is your book and why did you write it?
Okay, so my book is The Imperfect Parent. It's a non judgmental guide to raising children in the modern world. And the reason I wrote it was because my parents did the best they possibly could in raising me. Yet they still passed on some habits. And that's what I learned from. And that's how what I thought was the default for raising kids. Yet I knew personally that I was going to have to change some things. And very early on in our marriage, my mother in law sat me down and told me how she raised her son. She told me the good, she told me the bad, and she told me the ugly. And really, she told me the intentions behind what she was doing and why she did it. And it really made me go, oh, now I can ask the proper questions for to Charlie and know even the questions to ask. so that we could be intentional about how we wanted to raise our kids. Because I was raised one way, I had one perspective, and he had another. Not one being right or wrong, it's just a different perspective. And we needed to be on the same page. And so that was I can tell you all that now after the fact, after I wrote it. But before, when I really decided to write it, it really was for the benefit of my future daughter in laws. You know how I had a friend when my kids were, well, I have two boys. And when they were really little, my friend goes, "So have you started praying for your future daughter in laws?" And I was like, "Ooh, praying for my future daughter in laws?" I mean, like the kids are like 2 and 3. It's like, what a great idea, because I want them to be protected and taken care of and be the best that they could possibly be from parents and learn from. And so I was praying for all the best in them, yet not knowing how they are being raised, not knowing anything about them. And so when I was praying for that, it really turned into this nagging, like, thing on me to say, you really need to write this down. You know, you, yes, are going to have the opportunity to sit down like your mother in law did, but wouldn't it be even better if you wrote it down and wrote those questions that you had with Charlie so they could use them? Because again, it's not about controlling my daughter in laws or telling them what to do. In fact, that's the last thing I want to do. All I want them to do is to sit down and have the conversation and be intentional themselves of how they want to do it with the skills they have and have
Okay.
the best part of themselves. Sorry.
No, a couple things that jump out at me about that story.
Mhm.
So when I read this in your book, that your mother-in-law, I thought, what a brilliant idea. Number one, that it's so insightful of your mother-in-law to do
Mhm.
that. And I was getting teary eyed listening to you say that just now. Our son, who's our youngest of three, just married this summer.
Wow.
And so I have a daughter in law, and I want to sit down with her and give her sort of the 30,000-foot view of, okay, here's what I can tell you about our family dynamic, about
Mhm.
how my son was raised, good, bad, and ugly, like you say, the things that I think we did well, the things I wish we did different,
Mhm.
and the things that I know about him as a person, because all of our
Mhm.
children are different. And what a brilliant idea. I would never have thought to do that.
No, and I agree with you. And what a gift.
It's such a powerful idea because our history doesn't just disappear when we get married. We bring it into our marriage with us and into our family. And I just love the fact that she did that for you, and what a powerful tool it gave you.
Yeah, it did. And one thing that I've noticed is that, again, I go back to my parents did the best they possibly could with the information they had. And they had parents that taught them certain ways that might not have been great. And vice versa, I learned these ways. And in order to break some of those habits, the bad habits, you have to be an intentional and want to break them. And on top of it, one of the things that I did was enlist my sons to help me even break that habit. So I had to be even more honest about some of the bad things that I was doing. And I'm very honest about yelling. I wish I didn't yell. I sometimes call it very emotional, or have a very distinct, loud voice. And my boys then helped hold me accountable for this by I giving them permission to say, Mom, my ears are hurting, or Mom, I can hear. But it was an intentional thing. And when my husband and I first were married, my husband said, No, you don't ever talk back to your mother. You don't ever say those kind of things. And I was like, Well, wait a second. Let me tell you why I'm allowing them. And I don't see it as talking back. I'm seeing it as asking them to hold me accountable also. Because I don't
Okay.
want them yelling either.
So another thing that strikes me about this story is, did your mother-in-law know that she was handing this information to someone who really was going to approach that, was going to use this as an important data point, and someone who was going to approach this almost scientifically? Like this, when I read your book and how the curiosity and the openness and the desire to craft a family atmosphere and experience and really outcomes that were in many ways different than your family of origin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm struck by your openness and your curiosity and your willingness to just make something new, figure out how to make something new that you hadn't experienced in your own family of origin. So, kudos to you is what I'm saying.
Well, I think what one of the things is that if we're intellectually honest about ourselves and about life, and that was one gift that I think that I God gave me. And I at when I went to college, I think my eyes opened and I realized, oh, other people don't quite do things like this. And this is something I can learn from. And this is something how I could act even better. And, again, I go back to my parents did the best they could with the information they had. And if you go back through their history, there's generations. And I was blessed to have my grandmother basically live with us for a huge portion of my life. And I'm grateful for that. And I learned a ton from her. But I also got the opportunity to see some of the bad things passed on and see some of the ways that they acted. And you could see it then in my father, especially after I went to college and went back. You're shocked with the startling starkness of, oh, I know this isn't right anymore. So I knew I really wanted to do something different. I didn't know how, I didn't know what. And frankly, I did do the research. I read every single book out there. And then I realized that, wait a second, not a single one of these books knows my son is Carson Hamilton or my son is Conrad Hamilton. And they made me frustrated at first because I was like, they don't know my history. They don't know my husband's history. They don't know. So I was looking for parenting advice in places from people that didn't know who I was, didn't know my kid, didn't know their temperaments, didn't know my father-in-law, didn't know my mother-in-law, didn't know how my kids were raised, didn't know the history. And I thought there was a huge piece missing. And even though I was wanting to do it different and wanting to do it better and wanting to change what my parents did, the quote experts in my book didn't answer all the questions or didn't tell me what to do. And I thought that they were supposed to just tell me what to do. Give me the map. But it doesn't work like that. Everybody has
Right.
to do their own hard push-ups. As my husband loves to make the phrase, oh, I can tell you how to do a push-up, but you still have to do your own push-ups to reap
Mm,
the benefit of the push-up.
that's so good. So So you get curious about how to, you know, how to change this generational dynamic, how to not pass down some of these bad ways of relating or parenting style. I'm curious to know, how did Charlie receive this effort? Was he right on board from the beginning, or did it take a little while for him to understand that you were embarking on a very intentional mission, and to figure out what your own family, what your values were as a family, how you wanted to communicate with your kids, how you wanted them to feel comfortable relating with you, and endeavoring to understand who they are, not just make them mind.
Mhm. It That was a really great thing because having the intentional information that my mother-in-law gave me really made it that I could ask then more poignant questions and say, "Hey, you guys did this. I did this. Hey, let's work together and figure out what's best for our family." So I had a starting point. And having that start, and that was then the reason why in the book I wrote the stories about my own boys. These are real stories about the kids. Now, I also added stories of some of my friends' kids because I think it was needed to make a point. But these are all real stories with the names of people changed, and like the only names that are the same are my kids. But Charlie was on board because I had the stories, because I understood the background, and I was asking him questions about his upbringing. And he also is a super intentional person and knew that his family wasn't perfect either. And if we're all honest, you know, if you we the joke in our family is, if you think your family's perfect, well, you're probably the one that's the issue.
Yes. No perfect families, for
No
sure.
perfect families.
So I know we're limited on time today, and I would love to dive into every part of your book. And in fact, after reading it now, I really would like to have you back and do some more segments on, the parts where you're talking about the younger children
Mm.
and how you raised your kids and how you involved them in decisions
Mhm.
about their schooling or what they wanted to spend their time doing, how you encouraged them to develop their interests and their passions and try things and fail. Like, I just love all of that, and encourage entrepreneurial thinking. All
Mhm.
of those things are so incredibly important. But I know our job today, that you really wanted to visit about, was this part of life where we, as I think moms in particular, have been so involved in our kids' lives, and what happens when that last child leaves the nest, when that last child leaves home. And it's a profound change. I mean, obviously for them, but it's a profound change for us as people. And you have this beautiful analogy about parenting as a car ride, from driving the car to sitting beside them and eventually being invited into the third row. And I, having just moved my son to college last year, and then now this summer he's gotten married. Yes, he was a baby when he got married.
That's okay.
They're going to be babies together, married at college. They're going to be the cutest thing ever. But walk us through that, because I want to be invited into that seat. I want to be, I want to earn a place as the trusted advisor for my kid, and I'm having to navigate that right now.
So, my analogy about the car goes that basically, when the kids are super young and babies, you're driving the car, you're in charge, and they don't have a choice. And they're going with you in that car wherever you're going. And they're sitting in the back seat and they're buckled up. And, you know, frankly, they're even restrained in their car seat. And then they get out of the car seat and then they start asking questions, but you're still directing. You're telling them what to do. You're in charge. You're still driving that car. They're in the back seat. But then you invite them to clean up their own space. They get to take their trash out. They get to then be a little more involved. And then you get to invite them to potentially move to the front seat. And there, then they get to ask more questions and they're curious. And you're giving them then more ways to maintain the car. And yes, they get the choice of maybe choosing the radio station, cleaning the outside of the car, and watching how you're driving. And you are teaching now on a more side by side basis, but you are still in charge. But then that day comes when that child then takes the wheel and you're sitting next to them and you're still in charge and they still hopefully are listening and abiding by what you're saying because they're still learning. And you get the opportunity to still teach and teach them, but they now have that driver's wheel. And then the next step is you let them go by themselves. They know your rules. They know the way they've been raised. And now it's their opportunity to show you that they can do it correctly. I say, as a mom, this is your opportunity to believe yet verify. Check and
Hmm.
verify that they're really doing what they're saying they're doing. And then they go to college. And guess what? They take the car and go. And you get to advise, but from afar, that third row. You're advising because they're still asking, because you're still helping. But then that day comes, they graduate from college, they buy their own car. It's their car. They're driving it, they're making the decisions. They get the opportunity to choose to invite you in or not. They get the opportunity to go down the paths that they choose. And you, as a parent, get to listen. You get to advise, but they may or may not take your advice at this point in stage. You get to ask questions. They may or may not listen to your questions. They get to learn and they get to do their own struggle. And in my opinion, struggle, when a kid is struggling, when anybody has struggle, it's when just before you learn something. So struggle is good, and allowing our kids to struggle is something that parents need to let our kids do.
Hmm. For parents who are used to being needed, that third row seat can probably feel both beautiful and painful. And I mean, I'll raise my hand. I'm there right now.
Oh,
But
let me give you
how do you
another.
handle that? Yeah.
Oh, let me give you the next step, because I am now in this situation where my parents are 88 and 82. And they're in great health and mentally aware, but my dad's eyesight has gone. My mom, just had never handled some of the things that my dad had always handled. And they're getting to that age where we really need people like you guys to help us get even a better handle on what's going on for the future. And my parents had set up a lot of this, but they haven't communicated it to my siblings, and they haven't really communicated it to anybody else. And I have gotten the opportunity to see what they're doing, and there are some times, we'll be frank, that I don't agree with it.
Mhm.
However, it's my obligation as their daughter to do their wishes at this stage in their life, not mine. And I'm in that gap section where my kids are grown adults on their own, paying their own bills. And it's my obligation again to allow my boys to do their path and make their choices. And as a mom, I feel like we have a joke in the family. When somebody doesn't get to do something, they have short dinosaur hands and they can't reach anything, like a dinosaur,
Mhm.
short hands. And so mom's got her little short dinosaur hands at this point, and she has to do what her kids respect her kids' wishes and respect my parents' wishes. And at sometimes when I don't agree with either of them, it's a tough place to be.
Mhm. Yeah. I can see that, and I know you're speaking right to a lot of people listening to us right now. Um, and do you find too, since you've written this book and even before, a lot of us don't know who we are without that job. What do you say? And I know you've got a whole section of your book on this. Um, to your friends who say, I've spent 18 years raising this person and now I don't know who I am without that job.
Yeah, it goes back to identity. Identity is the thing that we all will die to keep or maintain our identity. It's so dear to us. And it's super important to remember I'm still a mother. My role in their lives and how I mother is absolutely going to change. I mean, you get the opportunity now to have a daughter in law, you get the opportunity to have grandkids. What a blessing. So, your role from taking care of and managing their day to day life has changed and gone to now getting to, when needed and when asked to, getting the opportunity to be a part of than these other people's lives. So it goes back to the identity. And I say to my friends, now that your kids have moved on, you get the opportunity to figure out your other identity. Get curious about what your interests are, because your life isn't just your kids, it's you also, your significant other, your friends. And you have talents. You have these amazing talents that are just waiting to burst out and help and do something with. And don't leave those unchecked and unused, because there are amazing things about you that everybody wants to hear and wants to know even more about. So don't hold those back, please.
Absolutely. You know, I guess you're hitting me where I live because, our when our son left for college last fall, um, my husband also at the same time decided we needed to sell our house that we had, you know, raised our kids in for the most part. And those two things coinciding hit me really hard. I did not
Absolutely.
want to leave that house, even though it was not the best long term property for us. It was too much house. It was two stories, which, we live in Lubbock, Texas. We don't need to have two stories. Those of you who are not from Lubbock that are listening to this, there are plenty of one story houses in Lubbock, Texas. You do not have to have. So, as we get older, be better not to have a two-story house. And it was older and it had a lot of yard, way more space than we needed now with no kids at home. And it was just a lot to maintain. So on a rational level, he was right. It was time to move on, but it happening at the same time that our son went to college, I felt like I was dying inside. I had to grieve all of that. I had to grieve, losing our family home. And, it took me, I was probably in a funk for about 6 months, honestly. I, uh, and now I'm glad that we did it, but it was hard. It was very hard. But thinking ahead, um, you know, if you believe in Imago Dei and we're all made in the image of God, there is a gift set, uh, well, there's just a part of the brilliance of our Creator in every person who that needs to be expressed in this world. There are tasks you were made to do,
Yes.
and yes, your life when you're raising kids, when they're part of your home, is pretty well, uh, you know, completely invested in that endeavor, as well it should be. But then when that day comes that they're launched and they're struggling through their own journey now,
Mhm.
with you in the third row, you know, what does God want you doing now? What is it that your gifts and talents are meant to be employed doing? And I think it's especially uh, important for women. I know that you have been involved in the business world, so it's not as if you haven't done things outside of your home. As you've been a mom, but you've also done things in the business world. But men, I feel like at this point in their lives are still, chugging along, fully engaged in the professional pursuits that they've been building upon for years, usually by this point.
Mhm.
But for us, now there's this huge part of our plate that is available.
Oh,
Um, and even for our women who are listening to this, who have a full-time career and have had a full-time career this whole time, that is still true because we both know how many hours parenting takes or did take for
yeah.
mom, especially.
Yeah. And here's something that I would love to bring up also is that we have the privilege of having our own business. So I get the opportunity. And guess what? Everybody in our family, even our kids, in some way, shape, or form, added to our business. And so in our home, we don't see it as, you know, one person working and somebody else is not. We all see it as more that everybody does a contribution. Now my contribution was more towards the children, and I took the majority of the role for that, and I was glad I had that opportunity. Not all families get that opportunity to have one person more focused on and more free time on that. But that
100%. Yes.
and that was a blessing that I got
Yes.
the opportunity to do that. And yet there are also women that are not, that's not their calling either in life.
Hmm.
And I respect that. Even if it's not their calling, they still, in my opinion, I believe they still have this sense when their kids go to college that they have lost something. They
Yes.
and it's hard to put your finger on. But my point is that I asked my son, I go, "Hey Carson, what do you think that, how do you think mom's going to handle you going off to college?" And he's like, "Oh, mom, you don't do anything anyway, so you'll be fine." And he's like, I go, "What do you mean I don't do anything?" "Oh, no, 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 no. You'll have a bunch of more free time to help dad because, before you just managed me and I was so easy," kind of thing. Like, you know,
I
he
love
he's
it.
so easy. But it was also the fact that he said to me, "Mom, you didn't really work." And I was like, "Wait a second, kid. Hey." I was
Hmm.
shocked to hear him say that. I was like, I did. Writing this book was work. And
Yes.
let me tell you what else I did. But his definition of a stay at home mom was super different than what you and I see or think of a stay at home mom. And so that's why I would say is that there's some women that work a full time job, yet their kids potentially could say or feel like they're a stay at home mom on what they're considering a stay at home mom is. And so, this identity for somebody who doesn't work or does work, I don't think that's the issue. It's an identity shift to the role of being more a mentor and less needed and less dependent on as a mother versus when they were kids. It's this launching. We spent 18 years raising these kids so that they could go and be on their own. But when that day comes, you're like, woohoo, oh, huh.
Hmm.
I mean, it's a super mixed emotion that, and there's one other analogy I like to give is that I remember when our boys were first born, and the majority of the responsibility was on me. I was breastfeeding. I just given birth to them. They were somewhat clingy and attached to me. My husband couldn't breastfeed, even though he could take a bottle, but he still didn't have that same attachment and that same responsibility and those same emotions and that same adrenaline rush when our kids would cry. He didn't have it. God didn't make him to have that. But God did make it for me. And he felt somewhat jealous, or maybe jealous isn't the right word, but disattached or not as close. And he kept on saying, hey, like me too, like let me in on this. I want to do something. I want to help. And he was very much wanting to be a part of it even more when he couldn't just he wasn't made that way, and vice versa. There are times now, our youngest son is starting his own business, that I am encouraging him to ask his father, because his father is more involved in the day-to-day operations of businesses in general. His father can help him even more. Now, I've looked at his numbers and helped in a different way, but I'm a backseat role compared to the role I used to play. And that's the key. And it's good and I'm happy for it, but it still tugs at my heart also. Like, oh, what about me? I want to be a part of your life.
Absolutely. You've been listening to part one of my conversation with Kate Hamilton, author of The Imperfect Parent, a non-judgmental guide to raising children in the modern world. I have loved this conversation so much. We have covered parenting adult children, breaking old patterns, and what it looks like to be more intentional in the season we're in. And we're just getting started. In part two, we're going to keep talking about the empty nest and the opportunity to improve our lives and our marriage in the second half of life. We're going to talk about helping aging parents and what it means to finish well. There's so much more good conversation ahead. So join us for part two when it goes live on August 18. A quick reminder that today's conversation is for educational purposes only. It is not meant to be legal advice, because to give you legal advice, we need to meet with you and know your specific situation. Thanks again for joining us today for this conversation, and remember to make the second half the best half.